Welcome to the Damn Good Dogcast. This is your host, Robert Reynolds. With me, Vinny Hardy from BleavInKentucky. We're here to talk Kentucky today, but before we do that, guys, huge commitment news. Huge commitment news over the weekend. Brandon Turnage, the transfer portal defensive back from Alabama, commits to the G, and then you get a 2023 commit with Marcus Washington Jr., great prospect, legacy prospect at that. But we can talk more about that. We'll probably do that Thursday. But obviously, right now we're talking Kentucky football. Look, man, Vinny, I'll tell you right now, Kentucky seems to always play difficult for us. They always play us tough. But y'all have had a lot of changes, especially from the transfer portal to start off. How are y'all handling, I guess, the spring with the losses and everything from the portal? I know you had a ton of losses. How are y'all handling that?
Good to be on, Rob, man. I appreciate it. As far as the depth and all that goes, it's look, you guys at Georgia are already used to this. Kentucky's trying to get there. They've got more than they've had in my lifetime. There were some guys that transferred out, but then you look at Wandale Robinson transferring in, so that's a positive. Kentucky kid went out to Nebraska for a minute, and the bridges weren't burned, so he decided he was going to jump back from the Big Ten and come back home. That was a positive thing. Joey Gatewood transferred in. We just saw Kevin Joseph from LSU that went to the draft. So we've seen some guys come in from bigger name schools coming to Kentucky to play football. We're still getting used to that. You guys, man, y'all are pros at this kind of thing. But the wide receivers are going to be a question for Kentucky. We've had some guys transfer out. That position is still in flux. Got a new offensive coordinator in Liam Cohen coming in from the Rams, try to get some more balance for the NFL because Kentucky can run the ball. We've seen that, but the passing game it's just been suspect for quite a few years. So get a little balance, free things up for Chris Rodriguez and some of the good stable running backs that they got.
Yeah, I know looking at the Kentucky team. I know obviously last year you made it, or y'all made an emphasis to run the ball, and it showed. And then on defense, you kind of have this Georgia makeup per se, where you just play very, very physical brand of football on the defensive side of the ball. Looking at our game, it was pretty rough. Y'all. I mean, when you come in there, the talent gap is still a little bit a ways. There's still a decent gap there, but y'all always play tough, and I think that's contributed to Stoops and his mentality there. And I think, like you were talking about, the receivers going. I wouldn't say. Well, I would say part of the receivers. I think it's just an offensive game planning to see if you can spread the field. That's going to be the biggest question mark, and I think that's going to be the success point right there. If it pivots on a good season or a bad season, I know we know you can run the ball. Kentucky's good for it. On defense, you're very stingy, right? You led the SEC in picks last year too. Very good, sound defensive side of the ball. Obviously, but I think the questions are on the offensive side, and I think it's really a schematic question. Maybe would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that's it. And look, Eddie Gran, that's another name. We've known him in the SEC for years. He was at Auburn. He was at Tennessee. Happy to see him come to Kentucky when Stoops hired him and Darren Henshaw. A lot of it, he was kind of snake bitten. He never had a true QB1. Every time you thought you had one in place, there was injuries. They were set to throw the ball all over the yard with Drew Barker. He gets hurt in the second game of the year against Florida. Same thing. That's when Steven Johnson came in on the fly. They had to kind of redo the whole offense. Same thing with Terry Wilson year before last, he gets hurt and is out for the season. And so you have Sawyer Smith, then you flip to Lynn Bowden, and you're just doing stuff out of necessity. So he never had a true quarterback to go into the year healthy with. That happens. So you had to adjust. And to his credit, they were still able to win, 7 games, go to a bowl game, things of that nature, without the offense as you hoped it to be. You mentioned defensively, and Stoops is just they've been patient with him. Barnhart and the athletic department let him go through, some lean years, 2-10 your first year replacing Joker Phillips, a couple 5-7 seasons when you start off 5-1, and maybe we get to a bowl game, and then you lose your last 5 or 6. Schedule gets tough and kind of eats you up. Then you start winning 7 games. You go to the bowl game. You win 10 games a couple years ago. That's first. Look, I'm 43.
Yeah, that was when y'all had Josh Allen, wasn't it?
Yeah. They
Yeah,
hadn't
that was
won
a that
10
was, that was a
games.
wild year, man.
Yeah, I was an infant. Like 77, year I was born, was the last time they won 10 games prior to doing it again in 2018. Defensively, they've been there. Stoops is a defensive guy, defensive coordinator at Florida State before coming to Kentucky. Secondary coach in Miami with Ed Reed and all those guys before going to Florida State. So the defense has been there. You mentioned the games against Georgia. 14-3 last year in Lexington. If we have a little bit of an offense to put some pressure on you, maybe, the game in Athens the year before in the monsoon, it was 21-0. So,
Yeah, that was an ugly game though. Oof, that was an ugly blowout.
and we had a touchdown dropped in the end zone, went right through the guy's hands. So I'm not saying we win. I'm saying maybe it plays out a little bit different. But Stoops has beaten everybody in the East since he's been there. He's beaten Missouri. He's had lost to him last year, but beat him last 4 out of 5. Beat South Carolina last 5 out of 6. Beat Vanderbilt 4 or 5 years in a row. Beat Tennessee for the first time in Knoxville last year since '84.
I'm proud of y'all for that too.
Hey man, I grew up on
To
the
hell with
Kentucky-Tennessee
Tennessee.
border. I grew up on the Tennessee border. I could be in Tennessee in an hour. I was 3 hours from Lexington, so I went to school with Tennessee fans. It's you go over to Kingsport in Bristol to go to the mall and shop. You deal with Tennessee fans, so yeah. Beat Florida for the first time since 1986. He's beaten everybody except Georgia. So as you guys know, everybody's gunning for Georgia. We're still not there yet, but trying to close the gap, trying to get there. And offensively, if you can just keep defenses honest, maybe keep Rodriguez and Smoking those guys from having 8-9 in the box. Get somebody to take the top off every now and then, just to let the running game breathe a little bit, take a little bit of the pressure off. It would be great.
Yeah, I think that'll definitely help. And it's fun here because when I bring somebody on from around the SEC, we typically try to do a season prediction, which we're about to get to in a couple minutes. And one of the things that I've been advocate for here is I genuinely believe that this could be the year Kentucky finishes second. But I think it's really going to come down to the Missouri game. Both Kentucky and Missouri have that shot. Really, who wins that game? I think puts in the number twos for the season in the East.
Mm-hmm.
I just see that, and I've talked about this. I think Florida lost too much. At least in my opinion, Florida lost too much. They're going to take a step back. So in that case, I guess let's go ahead and let's bring it in and we'll do the season prediction. What do you think?
It's there's clunkers, there's bad games, there's days you just don't have it. There's 10-2 again is there. I'm like,
oh no, it's absolutely.
I'm
gonna go ahead and we're gonna do this. We're gonna go ahead and do a quick season preview here, and we're gonna make predictions for the Kentucky season. So what was everybody seeing now? You're looking at Kentucky's schedule here. So going left to right, you look at you start off in Lexington against ULM, and then Missouri, and honestly, all eyes are on week 2. Then you look at Chattanooga, and then you go down to Columbia, Williams-Brice, and play South Carolina. And then it looks like you go to, or Florida comes up to Lexington. So you host Florida and then LSU back to back. So, looking at the first 6 games, what is your prediction, based off of what we're seeing here?
I hate to be the homer. I try to be objective, but I'm gonna say 5-1, and the loss just dropping that game at LSU.
Looking at it there, I could see it. I see your point of being 5-1 because it's very doable. I just think that you may be 4-2, and it's not the Florida game. I think Kentucky gives Emory Jones problems. I just think that's what's going to happen. So I'm not going to consider Florida as the loss, at least in my prediction here. The one question, though, and I want you to win this because I want y'all to come in second. The real question mark is the Missouri game week 2. You've got, you're figuring out your quarterback situation. There's a lot of question marks right now. Seems like up in Lexington. So, you have your ULM game, and then next week you have Missouri. And that right there is going to be the telling sign who finishes second, perhaps. But then, like you're talking about LSU, everybody looked at their record last year, but their talent was way better than their record. And I think with guys coming back, I think that's going to be a situation where LSU is going to come back to their normal form. 2019, absolutely not. But I do think they get better. So I think that may be your second loss for me. If I had to make my prediction, I'm gonna go 5-1, and the reason being, I think you barely beat Missouri with the hometown crowd.
Yeah, and a lot of people are looking at that Missouri game, rightfully so. They beat Kentucky last year under Drinkowitz. Can't make excuses. You can't make excuses at all. They won 20-10 out there in Columbia, and everybody had COVID. Everybody had a lot going on. Kentucky had stuff going on top of their stuff going on. You had Chris Oates in his situation with the medical incident that he had, and he was lost for the season. You had John Schlarman, the O-line coach, who battled cancer for 2 years. He just passed away last year. The Tennessee game in Knoxville was the last game he was with the team. They won. They stomped Tennessee in Neyland. He got the game ball. He couldn't travel to Missouri. He was really, things went downhill for him health-wise, even more so right before that Missouri game. So then he passes away. So that means you still got to go play Missouri. They lost. But I still, and Missouri's getting a lot of credit from the hot start they got, Drinkwitz and all that. But I still don't think they're there yet. They can get all the credit, and they might come to Missouri. They might come to Lexington and win again. And I'll be okay. I'll tip my hat if they win week 2 in Lexington. I just still think it's a little fool's gold with them, and everybody can hype them up. That's fine. But it was a lot of stuff going on, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but there was a lot internally going on. You're losing the coach. Your coach is about to die. Recruited a lot of these linemen from 8th and 9th grade. And the high of that Tennessee game in Knoxville, we all saw it. You guys happy for us whooping the Vols, was an exact low the next week in Columbia because he couldn't
Yeah, it was an
travel.
emotional game. I think it was
So
a trap game. Yeah, it was a
you
perfect
can't.
example.
You got to take your losses. You can't. If we had our coach, you line up and play. Missouri won, but I just don't think he's got them there yet. Now, if he comes in and lights us up and they win, well, I'll stand corrected. But until then, I don't think Missouri is quite as hype worthy as everybody's saying just yet.
I'll tell you what though, it's going to. I think it will be a good game. I definitely think it will be a good game there. And it's one that I'll be watching, or at
Yeah,
least keeping an eye out for. I just think there's a lot at stake early on there,
that's
especially in
true.
the East. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to throw this back up here. Obviously, we ended up with Florida coming to Lexington, and then LSU the same or the next week. So then you looked at this is where this is going to be brutal right here.
Yeah.
And I showed the comment earlier. The Facebook user was talking about the Florida LSU Georgia run is going to be pretty tough, and they are right.
Mm-hmm.
To start your back half of the season, you go down, go down to between the hedges, and you come to Sanford Stadium, and this is where I see it getting pretty rough. At that game, it's going to be a tough game, and what I mean by that is both teams are going to get beat up. It's just the way we play. Coming from a Georgia fan, I think Kentucky and Georgia seems to be one of those tough, physical, hard nosed games. But then you look at you have a bye week, and then you go to Starkville, and then Tennessee comes back to Lexington. Then you go to Vanderbilt, or New Mexico State comes in, and then you finish at Louisville. Obviously, that's a big rivalry game for y'all. So starting the second half of the season here, I look at, what are your thoughts here what are your predictions for the back half of the season?
You know, Everybody's gunning for y'all. You guys know that. You guys been just like y'all are gunning for Alabama. Everybody East is gunning for Georgia. I still got to see it myself, you know, before I got to see us beat y'all first. So I think we'll come up short again. It'll still be, there are no more victories, but it won't be Georgia just embarrassing Kentucky 63-3 or anything like that. It'll be a tough.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. Y'all secondary is too good to, even if we open the ball up, y'all secondary is pretty stingy too. So
Mm. And in old days, pre Mike Leach, that Mississippi State game is always tough. That's our opponent every year from the West. You know Mississippi State. They're always physical. Might not be as talented as everybody else, but they pound it. It's knockdown, drag out. Now you get a bye week and you're playing Mike Leach and they're passing the ball all the time. They averaged like 43 yards a game rushing last year. So it's not the same physical Mississippi State team. So that said, I can. That's why any other year I'd say 9-3 because you would lose to LSU, Georgia, and Mississippi State. I think you lose to LSU and Georgia, and then you right the ship and finish out the rest of the way. You got hyper with Tennessee first year. Vanderbilt is Vanderbilt. We got a winning streak going against them. Step out of conference, handle business against New Mexico State, and been whooping the Cardinals the past couple times. You got the upper hand in the rivalry, beating them recruiting and beating them on the field. Um, Kentucky still should have the advantage there. So I'll go ahead and say 10-2, 5-1 first half, 5-1 second half.
that's that would be a pretty damn impressive season. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think we look at Georgia here. Look, if you're listening in, I'm just gonna let you know this right now. Georgia, I think it's going to win that game, but please do not underestimate the physicality that Kentucky brings. If you're a dog fan, listen to what I just said. You've seen it in the past two games. Sure, we've won, but I'm telling you right now, they're going to play you physical, and I think it'll be a close game. Definitely for at least three quarters. I think you might see a couple touchdown. I think it becomes a couple touchdown win game, but it's late that it happens.
Yeah. It's so
So,
tough down there in Athens between the
yep.
hedges. The crowd will be there again, and it'll be that intimidating venue that it's always been historically.
Absolutely. Then you look at Mississippi State. I never, last year Mississippi State was just kind of just bad. They got off to a hot start against LSU, shocked a lot of the people, and then after that, it kind of just fell off pretty hard for them.
I think we had six
But
picks against them last year. I think 6 picks.
that was random. It was. I did not see them beating LSU, and they did. But I mean, you look at Mississippi State, right? Everybody knows they're going to be passing the ball. Mississippi State has to get a somewhat functional ground game to really be a true threat here. So I look at that right there. Will Rogers is a good quarterback, but I just don't know if they, I think your defense stops them, makes the plays, and I think y'all pull that win out there. You look at Tennessee and Kentucky, or Kentucky and Tennessee. That's always a good game. But let's just be honest here. Tennessee, complete rebuild, and they're really and Heupel's got a lot on his hands, in his first year. So it could be ugly by this point. It really could. But you look at Mississippi State, and then you look at Tennessee. I think you handle Tennessee, and then you handle Vanderbilt. Look at New Mexico State. I think that happens as well. Louisville, I think that's going to be a really close game. Louisville's not the Louisville of old. I know when Lamar Jackson was in Louisville, he gave y'all fits, but I think a lot of the time he gave a lot of people fits.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at it here, and I think it's a 10-2, 9-3 season at the worst, based off of this, unless obviously bearing no injuries. What we're basing off our predictions here. Obviously, injuries can make anything change. That's why it's way too early. But I could see it being at least a 9-3, probably a 10-2, and like I said, I think you finish second in the East.
Yeah, it's there. It's doable. And we even jumped up and bit Louisville when Lamar was there. That the year after he won the Heisman. Went to Louisville and beat them. They were 30-point favorites, and Kentucky beat them 41-38. He fumbled famously, and Kentucky fans, still cherish that memory because you had no shot of winning out there and then beat them. And then here lately, the past 2 years, is I think 101 to 23 is Kentucky's beating them combined score. It's just been
You talk about Louisville, right?
blowout. Yeah, just blowouts the
Yeah,
past two
Louisville
years.
hasn't been good since Lamar left, in my opinion. But you can't. The one thing about a rivalry game, and I think you know this, you still have to watch out.
Yeah,
And Georgia fans will tell you, we own the state of Georgia. Georgia Tech is not a true threat of it, in my opinion. But at one point they were. You had
yeah.
when you had Calvin Johnson and all that stuff like that. But
Mhm.
looking at it now, look, man, the ACC, and I think you'll agree here, the ACC is really top heavy when it comes to obviously Clemson, and then you look at North Carolina where they are now, and Miami, if you want to consider them up there at the top tier of the ACC or the next level, I guess below Clemson. After that though, there seems to be this huge drop off. And but I just don't really know how ACC can build back and get more parity. So it would be nice, right? It would be nice to
Yeah,
see a tough physical game between you and the Cardinals. But I just see Kentucky being too physical. It's just SEC football. I'm not gonna say that it's gonna win you every game, but at the end of the season, you've went through the gauntlet, and you sit there and you go play your rivals. You got that energy. You got on a damn good season. I think you got something to prove, and you're going to make a statement against them. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think that's the situation that Kentucky could look at possibly coming into that rivalry game at the end of the season.
That's it. And it's three bowl games in a row. A lot of people, Kentucky went 4-6 in the SEC last year, and people outside of the conference, man, they saw them playing a ranked NC State team in the bowl game, an 8-win NC State team, and Kentucky's not. And then, of course, Kentucky beat them, and that's coming from the SEC. You go and play an ACC team, and the physicality, the in the trenches. Kentucky is building and looking more like an SEC squad. So the eye test between Kentucky and NC State last year in the bowl game, well, we got the bigger line than them. Used to, Kentucky was small and outsized and out physical, and now they're comment about Vandy. Now, Kentucky's actually built enough depth and size and, like you said, physicality to where. And used to we had to go. It might be before your time. Back in the Hal Mummy days and Tim Couch, you throw the ball around, you go for it on fourth down. You had no defense. You try to outscore teams. Now Kentucky with a power running game, a physical offensive line, physical defensive line, like SEC teams do. True SEC teams. They're not Alabama and Georgia and all that yet, but we're trying to get in that second tier and trying to get to where the big dogs are.
I look at it as Stoops has got that defense in a situation where you can be a true threat in the East. But the thing there that I think you need to that everybody Kentucky fans, if you're listening, I think the main word is consistency. And what I mean by that is keeping the program in the top half. Obviously, I think you're a top half team anyway, but top third, maybe the top three, right? If you can consistently become a top three team, and then every once in a while you push past Florida, right?
Yeah.
Or and you make it, and somehow maybe everybody's looking at the gold standard as Georgia, and that's fine. Just from a talent standpoint, that's what you have to look at. But
Mhm.
Kentucky, when y'all had Josh Allen, that was a damn good team, and that was a really good season. I think that's what really catapulted Stoops up there and really helped with recruiting. And
Yep.
I live for recruiting here. I love talking about it basically every episode if I can. But once you start getting it, if you finish second and start to becoming more consistent, I seriously think there's a shot that you start pulling these kids, out of Tennessee, or you really start to come into these recruiting battles and come away with some elite talent. Because looking at Kentucky, the past couple of years, you've been able to do that.
Yeah.
Whether it be receivers or offensive linemen, you've started to see these kind of recruiting victories that really propel the program to the next level.
Yeah.
So I think obviously the consistency would play a part in helping the recruiting. You look at the teams, you look at Georgia's, you look at Bama's, right, Clemson's and Ohio State's in regards to recruiting. It's hard to top those, right? It's hard to top them. And generally speaking, the top recruiting teams when it comes to the rankings are the ones that are more successful. Not to believe, not to say that the star rankings are 100% accurate, but statistically saying, you have a top 3 class, you're going to be in that. You're going to be in the running for those national title contender spots, especially when it comes to the 14 playoff spots.
Yeah, and you mentioned recruiting. Is they've done a good job of getting guys early, projecting what they're going to be. You mentioned Josh Allen. He was a 2-star. His only
Mm-hmm.
offer was Kentucky and Monmouth. Benny Snell grew up in Ohio State's backyard. Buckeyes didn't want him. They were to get him. Stoops has done a lot in Ohio. It's like, hey, we're right here, right below you guys, but just come on down to the SEC. Instead of trying to bang our head and keep coming and recruiting against Georgia and Alabama down in the South, he's kind of made Ohio, because being from Youngstown and Cincinnati, hey, come over and play in the SEC, and they've had a lot of success there. Um, but yeah, the getting on guys early is been a key. And now they're starting to get some of those 4 stars, like you said. The Justin Rogers kid out of Michigan, D tackle, that's going to play a lot this year. So now they're getting better players, getting more talent, in addition to being able to get on guys early and see diamonds in the rough. Now you're starting to actually get good players, and then you're developing already the lower star players that you've been getting. So, like you said, it is gonna continue to kind of reap the benefits of it. You'll be able to see the improvements as far as
Yep,
recruiting goes and the level of talent that's coming in. But it takes
absolutely.
time. It takes time.
That it does. That it does. But hey, look, Vinny, I just wanted to thank you for coming on and obviously talking some Kentucky football. Obviously, like I said at the beginning of the show, Kentucky's been one of those teams that's played Georgia very physical, unlike a lot of other teams that we've played in the recent years in the East in regards. Obviously, we've had, Alabama in the SEC championship games, things like that. But, consistently, since Stoops has been there, it's been pretty consistently tough to play Kentucky, even though it's been wins, it's
Yeah.
been earned. So, much props and respect to Kentucky for that. I'm looking forward to the game this year, just to see how we play and how our new offensive strategy and philosophy kind of bodes against the defense, right? The defensive philosophy there. So it's going to be interesting. Hey, before you go, tell everybody where they can find you, man.
I'm on Twitter at Vinny Hardy, Vinny with a Y, Hardy with a Y. Um, Host Believe in Kentucky podcast, like you mentioned on the Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV, Believe in Kentucky. Had the J Boy, Jake Crane, on the other day, and he was, kind of like you, picking Kentucky to be in second. But just give us a follow there and check out the podcast. And for all the Georgia people like yourself, look, I'm older, but Dominique Wilkins is my all-time favorite NBA player, UGA legend, and I'm a TBS kid. So Dale Murphy was my guy. I'm a diehard Braves fan to this day. So we got that in common, even though we blue against red when it comes to college. But Dominique and the Braves, I can get with that all day long.
Yeah, we're not gonna question that, man. We're not gonna question it whatsoever. Hey, but man, I just wanted to say again, thanks for coming on, and looking forward to talking to you soon.
Man, appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for
Hey,
reaching out and having
my
me on,
pleasure.
man.
My
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
Y'all have a good evening
All right, bud. Have a good one.
too.
All right, guys. So, but before we wrap up, obviously we'll go back and start what I brought up to begin the show here. Looking at Brandon Turnage, I want to kind of get back into this recruiting here. Brandon Turnage, my initial take on what I think he will bring to the Georgia program. I'm looking at, obviously his situation at Bama and, coming from, top right outside of the top 100 when in the 2019 class. But I genuinely think that he could push for a starting role. There's not a ton of experience there from his time at Bama, but the talent is there. So, I think at least it brings some good quality depth there. But at the end of the day, though, I think he could push for a starting spot. We'll have to see. Ultimately, I just feel that, Kirby's not done with the portal yet. I think there's one more spot, maybe two. And I think you're going to find Kirby's going to try to find a starting cornerback, and obviously with Clemson waiting basically for September 4th. There, you have to have some. You have to have it shored up. So you look at that right there, and then obviously the 2023 commit Marcus Washington Jr. Father Marcus Washington played at Georgia. If anybody don't remember, if you don't remember, obviously, so it's a legacy commit. Really looks long and fast, kind of what Kirby wants, and obviously just adding on to the start of that 2023 class, starting off on a good note there as well. Obviously, and outside of the football here, or from a recruiting standpoint, I should say, obviously being from North Carolina, I was ecstatic to hear Governor Cooper basically cut down, or basically push back the mask mandates, let go of it. So you're looking at September 4th being at Bank of America Stadium in front of a full house. So with that being said, it's going to be wild. I cannot wait to watch that game. There's so much going on, so much hype around the game. And obviously now that you have a full crowd there in Bank of America, it's going to be a wild game. There's no question about it. I think all our eyes are going to be on us and Clemson September 4th, rightfully so. And don't forget about Bama, Miami, and other these games right there. But obviously the full house, the full capacity now is going to make September 4th that much more meaningful. Before I go, stay tuned, guys. If you're watching the show Thursday, we're going to introduce something, starting of a tradition here. I'll explain more then. If you're listening to the show, do yourself a favor and go to damngooddogcast.com and find out how to watch it, because I think Thursday you're going to want to watch it. I'm looking at it. I'm hoping that it hypes up Georgia fans, moving forward. So let's just say this. I think it's going to be fun. A good way to interact with parts of the show. That's all I'm going to say. But other than that, though, guys, look, I'm on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Go subscribe on YouTube. I'm on Twitch. Go follow there. Check out damngooddogcast.com again, though. You can find all the links to everywhere you're listening to, where to watch, things like that. There's so much there. So go check out the website. And on that note, though, guys, I just want to say have a great Monday and go Dogs.